The stars burned cold and distant as the human freighter Meridian's Hope drifted toward death. Its quantum drive had failed 3 days ago, and now the ship fell slowly toward a collapsing star. 300 colonists slept in cryochambers, unaware that they would never wake up. The 12 crew members who remained awake knew the truth. They had maybe 6 days before the gravity well pulled them into fire. Captain Elena Vasquez sent distress signals in every direction. She begged for help from anyone who could hear. But this sector of space belonged to the Volante Empire, and the Volante did not help lesser species. They watched. They laughed. They let others die. The Volante had ruled this part of the galaxy for 10,000 years. They stood 8 feet tall, with bodies made of something like living crystal. Their skin was translucent, and beneath it flowed rivers of light. They glowed from within, and the brighter a Volante glowed, the more powerful they were considered. Their technology was thousands of years ahead of humanity. Their ships moved like thoughts across the void. Their weapons could crack planets, and they believed themselves to be gods. Commander Keth Vorn of the Volante Patrol Fleet received a human distress signal. He sat on his crystalline throne aboard his warship and watched the Meridian's Hope tumble toward destruction. His officers stood around him, their bodies pulsing with soft blue light. "Should we assist them, Commander?" one officer asked. Keth Vorn laughed. The sound echoed through the bridge like breaking glass. "Assist them? They are humans. They are barely more than animals. Let them burn. It will be entertaining to watch." The other officers laughed too. This was how the Volante saw the universe. Other species existed only for their amusement. But aboard the Meridian's Hope, one man refused to accept death. Marcus Cole was the ship's chief engineer. He was 43 years old, born on Titan, one of Saturn's moons. He had spent his whole life fixing things that others said could not be fixed. He was not tall or strong or handsome. He had rough hands stained with grease and oil. His hair was gray at the temples, and his eyes were tired. He was the kind of man that others forgot easily. But Marcus Cole had a gift. He could look at any machine, no matter how broken, and understand it. He could see how the pieces fit together. He could find solutions that others missed out. When he learned that the Volante would not help, he did not give up. He studied everything he could find about the alien empire. He read old reports and diplomatic files. He learned about their culture, their beliefs, their laws. And he found something interesting. The Volante homeworld had once been powered by a great machine called the Celestial Engine. It was ancient and sacred, built by their ancestors long ago. For thousands of years, it had provided endless energy to their civilization. But 300 years ago, the Celestial Engine had stopped working. No one knew why. The greatest Volante scientists had tried to repair it and failed. The machine sat dead and silent in its cathedral, a symbol of lost glory. Marcus Cole had an idea. A crazy, desperate, impossible idea. He requested an audience with the Volante Monarch. The request traveled through channels. It reached Commander Keth Vorn first. He nearly deleted it. A human asking to speak with the god King Azethral? The very thought was insulting. But Volante law was clear. Any being could request an audience with the monarch. The monarch could refuse, but the request had to be delivered. Keth Vorn sent the request to the homeworld, expecting it to be thrown away. Instead, to his shock, the king accepted. King Azethral was ancient beyond human understanding. He had ruled for over 1,000 years. His body blazed with golden light so bright that lesser Volante could not look directly at him. He sat upon the throne of stars in his great palace, surrounded by nobles and priests and warriors who worshipped him as a living god. When he heard that a human wanted an audience, he laughed for the first time in decades. He granted the meeting because he was bored, because it would be amusing to see what foolish thing the primitive, Creature would say, Marcus Cole was transported to the Volanti homeworld. He stood before the throne of stars in his simple engineer's uniform, surrounded by thousands of glowing aliens who looked at him like he was an insect. The light from the king alone was almost blinding. "Speak, human," King Azethral commanded. His voice shook the floor. "Amuse me before you die." Marcus did not bow. He did not tremble. He stood straight and spoke clearly. "Great king," he said, "my ship is falling into a star. 300 of my people will die. I am asking you to save them." The court erupted in laughter. The sound was like 1,000 bells ringing at once. "And why would I do this?" the king asked, still amused. "Your people mean nothing to me." "Because I will give you something in return," Marcus said. "I will repair your celestial engine." The laughter stopped. For a long moment, there was only silence. Then the king leaned forward on his throne. His golden light flickered with something new: interest, suspicion, anger. "You dare to mock us?" he said softly, and that soft voice was more terrifying than any shout. "Our greatest minds have failed for 3 centuries. You are nothing. You are less than nothing. What makes you think you could succeed where gods have failed?" Marcus met the king's burning gaze without looking away. "Because I am an engineer," he said simply. "I fix things. That is what I do. Give me a chance to try. If I fail, you lose nothing. If I succeed, you gain everything." The king studied him for a long time. The nobles whispered among themselves. Many urged the king to kill the human for his arrogance. But Azethral raised one hand, and they all fell silent. He was bored with easy victories. He was tired of watching his scientists fail again and again. And there was something in this human's eyes that caught his attention. Not hope. Something harder than hope. Certainty. "Very well," the king said. "You will have 30 days to repair the celestial engine. If you succeed, I will save your people. If you fail, you will die slowly, and your people will burn. Do you accept these terms?" Marcus Cole nodded. "I accept." The king smiled, and it was not a kind smile. He was certain the human would fail. They always failed. "Then go to your death, little engineer," Azethral said, "and try to make it entertaining." Marcus was led away from the throne room, toward the cathedral where the dead engine waited. He did not know what he would find there. He did not know if he could truly succeed. But he knew one thing for certain: he would not give up without a fight. The Cathedral of the Celestial Engine was the largest structure Marcus had ever seen. It rose from the crystal plains of the Volanti homeworld like a frozen mountain. Its walls made of the same translucent material as the aliens themselves. Inside, the space was so vast that clouds formed near the ceiling. Light filtered through in strange colors, painting everything in shades of blue and purple and gold dot, and at the center of it all sat the engine dot. It was beautiful. Even dead and silent, it was the most beautiful machine Marcus had ever seen. It stood 300 feet tall, a tower of spinning rings and flowing energy conduits and crystalline spheres. Or at least, they should have been spinning. Now they were still. The conduits were dark. The spheres were cold. Marcus walked toward it slowly, his footsteps echoing in the empty cathedral. He had been given tools and access to the ancient records. He had been given 30 days. And he had been given one other thing: a guide. "You are wasting your time," a voice said from behind him. Marcus turned and saw a Volanti female floating toward him. But she was different from the others he had seen. She sat in a chair that hovered above the ground, and her lower body was covered by a dark cloth. Her glow was dim, barely visible, like a candle about to go out. Where other Volanti blazed with light, she flickered weakly. She was young by their standards. Perhaps 300 years old, which was barely an adult for her kind. Her face was beautiful in the strange way of her species, with sharp angles and eyes like captured stars. But those eyes were tired, bitter, defeated. "I am Princess Yethzera," she said, "the keeper of the engine. I am supposed to help you." She laughed, and there was no joy in the sound. "Though I do not know why they bother. You will fail like all the others." Marcus looked at her chair, at her covered legs. Among the Volanthi, he knew, physical perfection was considered divine. To be flawed was to be worthless. "What happened to you?" he asked. Most people would have been offended by such a direct question. But Yethzera seemed almost relieved that he had asked instead of pretending not to notice. "I was born broken," she said. "A degenerative condition. My neural pathways did not develop correctly. I cannot walk. I cannot run. I cannot dance." She gestured at her dim glow. "And as you can see, I barely shine. Among my people, I am considered less than nothing. My father, the king, could not kill me, because killing royalty is forbidden. So he hid me here instead. The keeper of the engine is supposed to be an honor. For me, it is a prison." She floated closer to the machine, looking up at its dark towers with an expression Marcus recognized. Love, despite everything. She loved this broken thing. "I have spent 200 years studying the engine," she said quietly. "I know every piece of it, every circuit, every crystal. I have theories about why it failed, but no one will listen to me. I am the broken princess. What could I possibly know?" Marcus walked up beside her. He looked at the engine, then at her. "Tell me your theories," he said. Yethzera stared at him. "What? Your theories? About why it failed? Tell me. You cannot be serious." "I am nobody." "I am. You are someone who has studied this machine for 200 years, Marcus interrupted. "I have studied it for 2 days. Which one of us do you think knows more?" For a long moment, Yethzera said nothing. No one had ever asked for her opinion before. No one had ever treated her as if her mind mattered. Then, slowly, she began to talk. She told him about the engine's design, about its power systems and control mechanisms, about the flow of energy through its crystal lattice. She told him about the day it stopped, 297 years ago, about the investigations that followed, about the theories that had been tested and failed. And then she told him her own theory, the one that everyone had laughed at. "I do not think the engine failed naturally," she said. "I think it was sabotaged." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Sabotaged? By who?" "There was a civil war long ago, before the engine died. A faction called the Purists tried to overthrow my family. They believed that our bloodline had grown weak. They lost the war, and their leaders were executed. But I found something in the old records. One of the Purists was an engineer who worked on the engine. He disappeared the day before it stopped. Everyone assumed he had fled in shame. But I think he did something to the machine before he left. I think he broke it in a way that no one would recognize." "And you told people about this?" "Of course. They laughed at me. The great scientists said I was a foolish child making up stories. They said the engine failed because of natural decay. They would not even look at my evidence." Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Show me." Over the next 17 days, they worked together. Marcus brought human tools and human methods. His approach was crude compared to Volanthi technology. He used physical wrenches instead of gravity fields. He crawled through access tunnels that were designed for hovering beings. He got dirty. He got tired. He refused to stop. And Yethzera guided him. She knew the engine like she knew her own heart. She showed him the hidden passages and forgotten chambers. She translated ancient texts that no one had read in centuries. She pointed him toward the clues that the great scientists had ignored. They argued sometimes. They disagreed about methods and priorities, but they never stopped respecting each other. Marcus treated Yethsera as an equal, as a partner, as a brilliant mind that had been wasted in this lonely prison. And Yethsera began to see Marcus not as a primitive human, but as a kindred spirit. Someone else who had been underestimated. Someone else who refused to give up. On the 14th day, they found it deep in the heart of the engine. Hidden behind layers of crystal and ancient machinery, there was a device that should not have existed. It was small, no bigger than Marcus's fist. It was designed to look like part of the original structure. But it was not it was a parasite. A machine made to slowly drain the engine's power and redirect it into nothing. It had been eating the celestial engine from within for 300 years. Yethsera had been right all along. They removed the device carefully, working together through the night. And when the last connection was cut, something miraculous happened. The engine began to hum. The rings began to spin. The conduits filled with light. The crystal spheres blazed like captured suns. Energy poured through the ancient machine, and for the first time in 3 centuries, the celestial engine lived again. Outside the cathedral, the entire planet began to glow. Power flowed into cities that had been dim for generations. Lights came on in towers that had been dark. Since before Marcus's grandfather was born, the Volanti looked up at the sky in wonder and fear and disbelief. The impossible had happened. A human had done what their greatest minds could not do, and standing beside him, shining just a little brighter than before, was the princess they had thrown away. The throne room was silent when Marcus Cole entered. It was not the silence of peace. It was the silence of shock. The silence of a world that had just seen everything it believed proven wrong. Thousands of Volanti nobles filled the great hall. Their bodies glowed in every color of the rainbow, from deep purple to brilliant gold. They stood in perfect rows, watching the human walk toward the throne of stars. None of them spoke. None of them moved. King Azethral sat upon his throne, blazing brighter than ever. But his light was not warm now. It was cold, angry, the fire of a star about to explode. Marcus stopped at the foot of the throne and looked up at the ancient king without fear. "It is done," he said simply. "The celestial engine lives again." For a long moment, Azethral said nothing. His eyes burned into Marcus like lasers. The human had done the impossible. He had succeeded where generations of Volanti had failed. This was not supposed to happen. Humans were lesser beings, animals. They were meant to fail and die and be forgotten. But Marcus Cole had not failed. The king could not deny what had happened. The whole planet had seen the engine come back to life. The energy that now flowed through their cities was real. The light that filled their sky was real, and a king's word was sacred law. Azethral rose slowly from his throne. He was taller than any other Volanti, a giant of living crystal and burning light. He descended the steps toward Marcus, and with each step, the temperature in the room seemed to drop. He stopped in front of the human. They stood face to face, god and mortal, king and engineer. "You have done what you promised," Azethral said. His voice was like ice cracking. "My word is my bond. Your ship will be saved. Your people will live." Marcus nodded. "Thank you. But that is not all you are owed," the king continued. He raised one hand, and servants came forward carrying trays and boxes and holographic displays. "You have given us a great gift. By ancient law, I must give you a gift in return. Pick your reward, human." The servants revealed what they had brought. Mountains of precious crystals that could power human ships for centuries. Weapons that could make humanity a true power in the galaxy. Maps of territories that the Volanti would give to Earth. Ships, technology, Knowledge thought it was a fortune beyond imagining. Any one of these gifts would change human history forever. All of them together would make humanity one of the great powers of the known universe. The nobles watched hungrily, waiting to see which treasure the primitive human would grab first. They expected him to be greedy. They expected him to take as much as he could carry. That was what lesser beings did. Marcus Cole looked at all of it. He looked at the crystals and the weapons and the ships. He looked at the maps and the technology. He considered the future of his entire species. Then he turned away from all of it. "I choose her," he said, pointing toward the back of the throne room. Everyone turned to look. Princess Yethsera sat alone at the far edge of the court, as far from the throne as possible. She was always placed there, hidden away where no one would notice her dim glow and her broken body. She was looking at Marcus with confusion in her starlit eyes. "I asked for the princess's hand in marriage," Marcus said clearly. "With her consent." The silence shattered. Nobles screamed in outrage. Priests howled about blasphemy. Warriors reached for their weapons. The sound was like a storm, like an earthquake, like the end of the world. King Azathrai's light flared so bright that it nearly burned Marcus's skin. His face twisted with fury, unlike anything the court had ever seen. "You dare?" he roared. "You dare to mock me? To mock my house? You choose her as a reward?" He pointed at Yethsera with disgust. "She is worth nothing. She is broken. She is the reason I succeeded," Marcus interrupted. The king fell silent. The court fell silent. Everyone stared at the human who had dared to interrupt the god king himself. "I did not repair your engine alone," Marcus continued. "The princess worked beside me every day. Her theories were correct. Her knowledge guided me. Without her, I would have failed like everyone else. She is not broken. She is brilliant. Your people were too blind to see it." He looked across the room at Yethsera. "I am not mocking anyone. I am making the smartest choice of my life. If she will have me." All eyes turned to the princess. Yethsera had not moved from her place. Her dim glow flickered with emotions she could barely name. For 200 years, she had been told she was worthless. For 200 years, she had been hidden away like a shameful secret. No one had ever chosen her. No one had ever wanted her. And now this human, this strange and stubborn man who had treated her as an equal, was asking for her hand in front of the entire empire that she should say no. She knew that. Accepting would be dangerous. It would mean leaving everything she had ever known. It would mean binding herself to a species that her people considered primitive. But what was she leaving behind? A prison, a father who saw her as garbage, a people who wished she had never been born. Yethsera rose in her hover chair. She floated forward, past the shocked nobles, past the furious priests, past the warriors who parted before her. She moved through the throne room until she was beside Marcus Cole. Then she turned to face her father. "I consent," she said, that the king's light flickered. For just a moment, he looked old, confused. He could not understand what was happening. This was not how the universe was supposed to work. "You cannot be serious," he said. "You would bind yourself to this. This animal? You would abandon your people?" "My people abandoned me 200 years ago," Yethsera replied. Her voice was steady. "This man has shown me more respect in 17 days than you have shown me in my entire life." "Yes, father. I consent. I choose him." Azathrul wanted to refuse. He wanted to strike them both down where they stood. But sacred law bound him like chains. He had offered a reward. The human had chosen. The princess had consented. To deny them now would break the most ancient traditions of his house, that it would prove that the word of the God King meant nothing. "Very well," Azathrul said through clenched teeth. "Take her. Take my broken daughter. I hope you enjoy your prize, human. You could have had an empire. Instead, you chose worthless trash. Marcus looked at the king without anger, without hatred, almost with pity. Worthless to you, maybe, he said. Not to me. He took Yesera's hand gently in his own, and not anymore to anyone else. They walked out of the throne room together, the human engineer and the alien princess. Behind them, the court watched in stunned silence. Ahead of them waited the stars, and a future that neither of them could yet imagine. But they would face it together. That was enough. 5 years passed like a dream. Marcus and Yethzera made their home on Mars, in a small city called New Olympus that clung to the red cliffs above a great canyon. The air was thin and cold, and the sky was the color of rust. But to Yethzera, it was beautiful. It was freedom that the people of Mars did not care that she could not walk. They did not measure her worth by how brightly she glowed. They saw only a brilliant scientist who had come to share her knowledge with humanity. They welcomed her. For the first time in her life, Yethzera was not ashamed that she worked with Marcus in a research facility they built together. It was not a grand cathedral like the one that held the celestial engine. It was just a simple building made of steel and glass. But inside, they did impossible things. Yethzera taught humans the secrets of Volanthi technology. She explained the crystal energy systems and the gravity manipulation fields and the quantum communication networks. She did not give them everything at once. That would have been too dangerous. But piece by piece, discovery by discovery, she helped humanity catch up to the older races of the galaxy. And Marcus took her knowledge and made it practical. That was his gift. He could take a beautiful theory and turn it into a working machine. Where Yethzera saw possibilities, Marcus saw blueprints. Together, they were unstoppable. Their first great achievement was the Drake-class cruiser. It was ugly by Volanthi standards, a blocky thing made of human steel and alien crystals. It did not flow like water or shine like a star, but it worked. It was fast and strong and could hold its own against ships that had been designed by civilizations thousands of years older. Humanity built 100 of them in the first year, then 1,000, then 10,000. The other species of the galaxy began to notice. The Volanthi noticed most of all. King Azethrael watched from his throne as humanity grew stronger year by year. He saw the human ships spreading across the sector. He heard reports of human colonies on worlds that had once belonged to no one. He felt his influence shrinking like ice in summer. And he hated it. The king's eldest son, Crown Prince Methpheric, hated it even more. He was everything his sister was not. Tall, powerful, blazing with golden light like his father. He had been raised to believe that the Volanthi were gods and all other species were insects. The idea that humans were becoming equals was unbearable to him. We must destroy them, he told his father. We must burn their worlds and scatter their ashes. They are vermin. They do not deserve to exist. Azethral was old and tired. The fire in him had dimmed over the centuries. But his son's fire burned hot enough for both of them. Do what you must, the king said. Teach them their place. Methpheric smiled. It was not a kind smile. He gathered the greatest fleet the Volanthi Empire had ever assembled. 500 warships, each one capable of destroying a planet. They moved through space like a swarm of angry stars, heading for the nearest human colony. The colony was called Haven's Rest. It was home to 2 million people, farmers and miners and teachers and children. They had no military value. They were just ordinary people trying to build ordinary lives. Methpheric did not care. He wanted to send a message, but humanity had been watching too. Admiral Marcus Cole received the warning when the Volanthi fleet was 3 days out. He had left engineering behind years ago. Now he commanded the defense forces of the human frontier. It was not a job he had wanted, but someone had to do it. And he was the only one who truly understood both human and of Velanthi technology. He called Yethzera from the bridge of his flagship. The Meridians hoped too. It was named after the ship that had brought them together, though it was 100 times larger. "They are coming," he said. "Your brother's fleet. 500 ships." Yethzera's face appeared on the screen. She was in her laboratory on Mars, surrounded by holographic displays and half-finished projects. Her glow was still dim by Velanthi standards, but her eyes were bright. "How many ships do you have?" she asked. 87. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I am transmitting new code to your engineering teams. Modifications to your shield systems. My brother is arrogant. He will use the same tactics that Velanthi have always used. I know how to counter them." Marcus smiled. Even now, across light years of space, they were still partners. "Then let's give him a lesson he will never forget," he said. The Battle of Haven's Rest lasted 12 hours. The Velanthi attacked with overwhelming force, expecting the humans to break and run. They did not. The human ships moved in formations that made no sense to Velanthi tacticians. They fought in ways that violated every rule of civilized warfare. They refused to die when they were supposed to die, and their shields held. Methverv, seas. Weapons hammered against barriers that should have collapsed in seconds. But Yethzera's modifications worked. The human shields bent but did not break. And while the Velanthi wasted their firepower, the human ships struck back. The Drake-class cruisers were not elegant, but they were tough. They took hits that would have destroyed older human vessels and kept fighting. Their weapons were crude by Velanthi standards, but there were so many of them, and they never stopped firing. One by one, the Velanthi warships began to fall. Methverek could not believe what he was seeing. His perfect fleet was being torn apart by primitives, by animals. It was impossible. It was humiliating. He ordered a retreat, but it was too late. The human ships surrounded him. His flagship's engines died. His weapons went silent. Crown Prince Methverek, heir to the Ascendant Empire, was captured by the very beings he had tried to exterminate. When the battle ended, 300 Velanthi ships had been destroyed or disabled. Human losses were 11 ships. The colony of Haven's Rest was untouched. Across the galaxy, the news spread like wildfire. Humanity had won. They had faced the might of the Velanthi Empire, and they had won. On Mars, Yethzera watched the victory celebrations from her laboratory window. She did not feel joy. She felt something more complex than joy. Something like sorrow and hope and fear mixed together. Her brother was a prisoner. Her father's empire was broken. The people who had hurt her were finally facing consequences for their cruelty, but they were still her people. They were still her blood. Marcus called her again that night. "It is over," he said gently. "We won." "I know," she replied. "What happens now?" "That depends on your father. He can negotiate peace, or he can keep fighting and lose everything. The choice is his." Yethzera closed her eyes. She thought about the throne room where she had been humiliated. She thought about the cathedral where she had been imprisoned. She thought about the father who had called her worthless trash. "He will negotiate," she said. "He is old and tired, and his heir is in chains. He has no choice." "Then I need you with me," Marcus said. "When we meet him, I need you at my side." "Why?" "Because you are the reason we won. Not just today. All of it. Everything we built. Everything we achieved. It started with you. It is only right that you are there at the end." Yethzera opened her eyes. She looked at the stars beyond her window. Somewhere out there, her father was preparing to face the consequences of his arrogance. "Then I will come," she said. I will stand beside you. Always, Marcus replied. Always, she agreed. The space station hung in the void between stars, far from any world that either side could claim. It was neutral ground, a place where enemies could meet without fear of ambush. The human delegation arrived first. Their ships were still scarred from battle, still patched with hasty repairs. But they were whole. They were strong. They had proven themselves. Admiral Marcus Cole stood at the head of the delegation. He wore his formal uniform now, not the grease-stained clothes of an engineer. But his hands were still rough, still marked by decades of honest work. He had not forgotten where he came from. Beside him, Yethsera floated in her hover chair. She had traded her dark robes for something brighter, something that caught the light and made her dim glow seem almost beautiful. She was not hiding anymore. Behind them stood the representatives of humanity, soldiers and scientists, politicians and priests. They had come to witness history that the Volanti arrived an hour later. King Azathral's ship was still magnificent. It flowed through space like liquid gold, shimmering and perfect. But when the king emerged, he looked diminished. His light was still bright, but there was something tired in it, something old. He walked slowly into the meeting chamber, surrounded by his guards and advisors. His face was a mask of stone. He did not look at his daughter Crown. Prince Methvaruk walked beside him, freed from his cell for this moment. The prince's light had dimmed during his captivity. He did not blaze with golden fire anymore. He barely glowed at all. The two sides faced each other across a wide table. Behind them, walls of glass showed the endless stars. "You wish to negotiate," King Azethral said. His voice was cold. "Speak your terms." Marcus stepped forward. "Our terms are simple. Peace. Real peace. Not a temporary truce. Open borders between our peoples. Trade and cooperation. And most importantly, recognition. Humans are not lesser beings. Humans are not animals. You will treat us as equals from this day forward." The king's light flickered with anger. "And if I refuse? Then the war continues. And you will lose." Azathral's hands tightened on his throne's armrests. He knew Marcus was right. The Battle of Haven's Rest had proven that human technology had caught up. With Yethsera's help, humanity now had weapons and shields that could match the Volanti. The old advantages were gone, but the king was proud. Even now, even in defeat, his pride burned. "You asked me to bow before primitives," he said. "You asked me to admit that we are no better than you." "I ask you to see the truth," Marcus replied. "Nothing more. The truth." Azethral laughed bitterly. "The truth is that my own daughter betrayed her people. She gave you our secrets. She made you strong. Without her treachery, you would still be crawling in the dirt." Yethsera floated forward. For the first time since entering the chamber, she spoke. "I did not betray my people, Father. I was never your people. You made that clear when you hid me away like a shameful secret. You made that clear when you called me worthless. When you offered me as a reward, because you thought no one would want me." She stopped in front of the king's throne. Father and daughter faced each other, light and shadow. "I did not betray the Volanti," Yethsera continued. "I simply found people who valued what you threw away. That is not betrayal. That is survival." The king stared at her. For just a moment, something flickered in his ancient eyes. Regret? Shame? It was impossible to tell. Then the moment passed, and his face hardened again. "You could have had ships," he said to Marcus, ignoring his daughter completely. "Wealth, territories, technologies that would have made your species powerful beyond imagination. Instead, you chose her." He gestured at Yethsera with disgust. "You chose broken goods. And now you have the arrogance to dig terms to me?" Marcus smiled. It was a quiet smile, a knowing smile. The same smile he had worn 5 years ago in the throne room of the Volanti homeworld. "I chose the most valuable thing in your entire empire," he said. "I chose the person you were too blind to see. Your loss. My gain. Humanity's gain." He took Yethsera's hand. She squeezed it gently. "Look at what your broken daughter built," Marcus continued. "Look at the fleet that destroyed your armada. Look at the technology that countered your weapons. Look at the shields that saved 2 million lives." All of that came from her mind. "From the princes you threw away like garbage." The king said nothing. There was nothing he could say. "You asked me to pick a reward," Marcus said. "I picked wisely, and my people are stronger because of it." Yethsera looked at her father one last time. She saw the old king on his stolen throne, surrounded by fading glory. She saw the brother who had tried to commit genocide and failed. She saw the empire that had rejected her, now forced to beg for peace from the species they had once scorned. "You offered him a choice," she said softly. "And for once in your long life, someone chose correctly. For once, so did I." She turned away from her father. She faced the stars beyond the glass walls. She faced the future. "Sign the treaty," she said. "End the war. Let both our peoples find a new path." King Azethral sat in silence for a long time. His advisors whispered among themselves. Methphorek stared at the floor, broken and defeated. Finally, the old king nodded. "Very well," he said. His voice was hollow, empty. "We will have peace." The treaty was signed before the day was done. Human and Volanti together, bound by words and seals and sacred oaths. It was not a perfect peace. There would still be tensions and conflicts in the years to come. But it was a beginning dot as the delegations prepared to depart. Azethral called out one final time, "Daughter." Yethsera stopped. She did not turn around. "I do not understand," the king said. "I will never understand. But perhaps I was wrong." It was not an apology. It was not forgiveness. But from a being who had ruled as a god for 1,000 years, it was something close to both. Yethsera was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Yes, father." "You were." She floated out of the chamber, Marcus at her side. Behind them, the Volanti watched in silence. Ahead of them, the stars waited. They returned to Mars together, to their laboratory and their home and their life. They continued their work, building bridges between species, creating technologies that helped all of the galaxy grow. They had children, strange and beautiful hybrids of human and Volanti. They grew old together, happy in free dot, and sometimes, late at night, Marcus would look at his wife and smile. "I still cannot believe you said yes," he would say. "I still cannot believe you asked," she would reply. They had started as strangers, an engineer and a princess, two broken people from opposite sides of the galaxy. But they had found in each other something precious, something that all the treasures of the Volanti Empire could never match. They had found value where no one else had looked. They had found each other, and in the end, that was the most human thing of all.